Oh, jeez. Fill out a workers' compensation.
But I do, I want to start out.
Oh, we're glad to have you back.
Yeah.
So I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's a regular meeting of the Capital Asset Planning Committee. We do have a quorum present. The agenda has been sent previously to the members of the committee. Teresa has an excused absence. She's not feeling well. I got an email from her this afternoon. So the first order of business would be to review and approve the minutes of the October 30 meeting. Is there a motion?
I have a Paul reviewed the minutes when after I did them, and he came up with a couple of corrections, and I just wanted to go over them if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
The first one, I don't know if you have a copy of the minutes, but the first one to do. I think I didn't have to complete in the second paragraph, the completed committee. I didn't have to complete it in there, and I want to add, and you notice that, and we'll want to add that. And then there was a sentence here. There was a review of the plan and its assumptions. That's all right. The question was, and this is the sentence that he made some changes. The question was where we are after the changes made during the last meeting. It was established that and then he wants to, that the appropriation would set for the capital reserve account for the first 10 years. And he would like to add, it was established that the assumed appropriation would, and then change it to would result in a capital reserve balance above the threshold set for the first 10 years of the plan. And I think it's saying the same, but it's saying it better. So I would say yes.
So is there a motion to accept the draft as amended?
There was one word I wanted to add in when it says the question was where we are after the changes made during the last meeting. I believe that the changes. Oh, you were saying, actually, I said that the question was where we are after the changes made during the last meeting. And you are adding, the question was where we are after the changes and result in a capital, or the changes result in a capital reserve balance. And I just want to write the word "and" in there,
Okay.
so the sentence, and that's all. And yeah, I make a motion that is accepted as change.
Is there a second?
Okay, good.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Minutes are approved as amended. Next item is not on the agenda, but it's appropriate at this time. We have not elected a secretary for the committee as of yet. So I'd like to open the floor for discussion and we've been using a secretary pro tem, and Peter has agreed to do that for the last couple of meetings. So I'd like to open it up for a discussion of setting or electing a secretary for the balance of this committee year, which goes through May of 2025. So how do we want to open this discussion?
Well, I want to say I've been doing this for over when what's his name was still the chair, when Jim was still the chair. After Jim quit, I think I became a secretary. So I've been a secretary for I don't know how many years. But I am I basically feel I should be done with it, and I would like the honor to be, give the honor to somebody else.
You've been secretary for all of the 12 or 13 years that I've been here, so.
I know. I don't know if you would like to be the secretary, but I would like to.
Well, I'm feeling a little guilty.
You're a little vulnerable now, are you?
What better way to apologize?
Right.
Tell you what, how about I assume, well, wait. Primary duty of the secretary is to take meeting minutes, send out meeting minutes for approval.
That's the job. Right.
That's
Yeah.
all. That's basically it.
Yeah.
How about I start
Okay, okay,
Thank
okay.
All right, so would you like to nominate?
I will nominate you as the secretary starting next month. And I'll make a motion that we will nominate you as the secretary starting next month.
Okay, is there a,
that?
yeah, I'll second that. All right, all in favor?
Favor.
Okay.
Well, congratulations.
Right, yeah, great. See, is that job you did when you were pro tem that one night? Everybody just loved it.
Yeah, you did
He'd
such
be
a good
great.
job.
All right, right. Okay. Okay, next item is public comment. There's no public present. So we'll move on to select board input. Andy, anything from the select board that you'd like to update us
I
on?
do have something from the select board. Though it didn't make the first meeting last month, it made the last meeting. We had a little confusion with the temporary town administrator and had a hard time getting it on the agenda, but both items, the boiler and the AV system, the select board voted to include on the plan
Okay, great,
in concurrence with yourselves.
right.
Both on those.
The boiler, the Mallet Hall boiler and the AV system in the DeWitt room. AV and sound system,
As requested by the
as
committee.
requested.
Okay. Okay. Was there any discussion about that? Just curious.
I reminded the interim town administrator 4 times before this last meeting, and it still didn't make it on the agenda, so we brought it up,
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
other business.
Right. So, I mean, was the select board have any questions or concerns about anything there?
No.
Okay.
no, We thought it very prudent.
Okay, good, thank you. The next, anything else from that?
I don't have a whole lot right at the moment. We've been up to our eyeballs trying to find a new town administrator, so
I'm sure you have.
it's not an easy task right now, not with the job market out there.
Yeah,
Interviewing.
Oh, we've interviewed quite a few, but not a lot of necessary experience that have been applying.
Does it look bright? Does it look okay, you think? You have anybody in mind yet or nothing?
We've made two offers and they've both declined. So we'll see where we go from here.
Why would they decline if what was the?
One was a retired town manager and her family did not want her to continue in town government. And one was a young man who was a town clerk in another town. And with his young and growing family, he thought it would be too much to take on right at this time.
okay, thank you, Andy. Next, I'd like to have a discussion on the impact fee ordinance. And we've mentioned this before, and it's the first time we've had a chance to talk about it, but in our charge, it is mentioned that the committee will look to the impact fee ordinance as a potential source of revenue for capital items that the town needs new or in refreshment. So having decided that we're going to look to that as a source, this will be the first time we've actually looked at the ordinance to see how the ordinance will work with that or how we can work with the ordinance. So I've provided the committee with a copy of the ordinance. I took the liberty of highlighting certain things that I thought stood out to me, and maybe you found some additional things to look at as we have this discussion, but the intent tonight is really to get this in front of the committee, have a discussion, see if we have any questions, concerns. If we want to take it back to the select board and say, hey, this is a great tool, we can use it, but we need these adjustments, or we can't use this at all in its present form, or hey, it's just fine the way it is. So in the impact fee ordinance, it does provide for impact fees to be paid into funds for recreation, open space, public works, and public safety. And then the ordinance goes on to talk about the process and how these fees are developed. It doesn't spend a lot of time on how these fees get used, and that's where I have some open questions and would welcome any assistance from other committee members or a select board member in trying to understand how these could be used. But I think one of the keys was that under section 7, the impact fees cannot be used for routine maintenance or operational activities. There's no further clarification as to what that means, so that's left up to the reader. And the following, it does say the following costs may be included in the capital cost of infrastructure improvement. And it talks about acquisition of land, engineering, surveying, et cetera, the actual construction, including demolition, clearing, and grading, mitigation costs, I'm not sure what that is, legal and administrative, debt service, relocation costs, blah, blah, blah. So that we can come back to at some point. But then as I read this, getting into, all right, the impact fee for recreation, and it talks about the purpose. And the purpose, as I read it, is very unclear. And there's no definitions to talk about in terms of recreation. So I think that's an area that we should have some discussion on if we can. In the open space, it talks about the purpose, and it's, again, not a very clear purpose, but it does have some definitions that help out in terms of what is open space and defining that, and then public open space. So there's a little bit more to go by. You get into public works, and it talks about the replacement of existing infrastructure as determined by the Capital Project Committee, which would be us. My question there is, I don't know the definition of infrastructure as it's used in this, and that holds the true again in public safety. I did look up the dictionary definition of infrastructure, and in my mind, it was easy to say roads, bridges are infrastructure, and things like that. Question is a dump truck infrastructure? Is that public works infrastructure? I'm not sure. Is a fire engine public works infrastructure? I can make leaps to both of those, but I'm not sure how big a leap I'm taking when I do that.
Would Augusta be able to define that word, infrastructure?
MMA might be able.
I mean, because when it,
Broader definition.
yeah, the definitions that in Webster's or Merriam-Webster dictionary and other Investopedia I looked at, roads, bridges, water systems, communication systems
Buildings.
that are used in, let's say you have a telephone company that's town-owned, and you would have buildings that houses the equipment, and even the equipment might be infrastructure. But what I got to, when I look at what we have in our public works department, dump trucks are a big piece of that, grading equipment, backhoes, that Are those infrastructure or well, I
I would rather think that anything that doesn't move might be.
well, that's,
closer to
yeah.
infrastructure.
Yeah, my initial reaction subject to
right.
is that infrastructure is something that. Oh, infrastructure is something that is installed. And it doesn't refer to the equipment necessary to maintain it. That's.
I mean, I did find one definition that included equipment in the definition, but didn't define equipment. It included equipment, like the public works infrastructure. What is that? Is that all the equipment we use to maintain? Is it just the roads and bridges? And the dump truck that we use to maintain the roads and bridges is something else?
Well, infrastructure, if you talk about, my feeling is the feeling that stuff that moves would not necessarily be included in that, but roads and bridges, buildings maybe, but things like telephone systems, that would be as infrastructure, computer systems, maybe anything that connects you to the wider world.
The equipment in like a telephone switching
Right,
building. That would.
it's part of the infrastructure.
But like what may not be correct.
Right, that would seem to be part of the infrastructure. In a water system, the pipes, the pumps, the telemetry system that controls the on and off of the pumps would all be part of the water system infrastructure,
Infrastructure and equipment.
right? And if you had a wastewater system, be the same type of thing, all your buildings and pump houses and all the pipes and, all of that would be the infrastructure.
But
I mean, that's, it seems intuitive.
I think local equipment just doesn't seem like it would qualify.
But roads and bridges,
Roads.
so there's a
bridges,
portion of
culverts,
what we are doing
Mhm.
qualify, I think.
Guardrails.
Yeah.
Can I back up just a minute on this? In reading this, section 4 identifies dwelling units or businesses that are subject to these impact fees. But that is, to existing homes or square footage added to existing businesses. And that is the one and only mention of businesses in this entire thing. And in fact, the calculation methodology for each of these is based strictly on residential by bedroom.
Mhm.
So I see no further mention of businesses.
How do you calculate? $10 million, $20 million greenhouse.
There we go. That would be a perfect example. And I mean, I want to know that just because I want to thoroughly understand what this all means, but it would also potentially impact how I felt money was spent.
Well, let's use that example. If that large project down the end of town there has puts a requirement on public safety for a new standpipe or a pond, retention pond and that they can hydrant that they can draw water out of. Is that would be part of the infrastructure that needs to be added due to that development. And I would think the impact fees could contribute to that. That's what they're there for,
Or to replace,
or to replace something.
there's a bunch of our dry hydrants that should be replaced.
Right. Or
Those would be part of the infrastructure, I would think.
those would, but now if you need a bigger tanker, because that facility needs bigger water supply to fight a fire there, is the tanker part of the infrastructure? Because that moves. And we've been kind of drifting towards things that move are not infrastructure. But if that's what you need to provide this service to that resident, if you will. But then, and now before you answer that, but then Kyla goes to the point, if businesses don't participate in this, how can we spend impact fee sources of funds on businesses? That kind of comes around again.
Personally, I think the whole impact fee ordinance,
Yeah,
the greatest amount of impact fee goes to recreation. And I understand why that was, it was written that way, because I know who the writers were.
right.
Do you know how the state defines impact fees?
I did, I've read multiple statute and everything else. There are some towns that use them to pave their roads. We never have. Cumberland used impact fee monies for routine paving.
Well, that seems to
Because
be,
the growth necessitated that they maintain the pavement more often than they would have without the growth.
Okay, which is getting to your point.
Right. I mean, if you put a development down or that greenhouse development has a lot of trucks coming in across local roads, there's going to be more maintenance for that local roads. And is that an impact?
Just, this may or may not be an aside, but oftentimes, giving permits to such projects are contingent upon repairing all roads that have been damaged to a degree. So, you go in, you build your development and you have to repave the road half a mile either way. Something to that effect. And likewise, standpipes, other items that are a direct result of an improvement are often, either have to be paid for directly by the developer or it has to be written into the contract, that the developer will, pay for it. I'm sorry, paid, either performed by the developer or paid for by the developer.
Those would be part of the development permitting process.
For example, the last project that I worked on, there was an alley that was used. It was absolutely critical to the construction of the whole thing. And that alley was just torn up. And it was written into the contract from the beginning that they had to strip it down. And then they had to put a new binder and a finish coat on it.
But I would see that as something, you write that into the contract to protect your existing impact fees. So you don't have to use them
That's correct.
for that.
Yes.
That's a construction issue. And then the impact fees get used for additional infrastructure that's required by growth as you grow.
But it does cover potential additional expense. I mean, you wouldn't, under this ordinance, you wouldn't use the impact fee to repave that
Right.
alley. Still has to be repaved.
Right.
And you don't want the town to have to do it.
Merrill Road, we did require. That was part of their contract for that.
Right. That development.
Multi-road development, one-off Elmwood. Elmwood is state road, so we didn't require anything there. On Merrill Road, if they, in the eyes of the road commissioner, if they had done any damage.
Right. But that would not be an impact fee issue.
But that was written with the planning board.
Any other thoughts on that anybody have as a result of reading the ordinance?
I think we could better use impact fees, but they need to be better apportioned. Where they could be used better than.
Where do you think they could be, where do you think they could be better used? Give me some examples of better
I think
use.
they could be better used, they could go towards culverts. Road projects. They could certainly be used by the fire department for dry hydrant replacement, upgrades. And additions.
So you're circling back to infrastructure.
Absolutely, and they could certainly be used if we're gonna build a new fire station and public works facility. As a source, no. The sole source of funding.
Right, I mean, the fund, as far as I know, the funds aren't big enough that they're gonna pay for something, but they can contribute towards those,
Or
right.
site preparation or something.
Or the work that's being done now in the development of the project. I mean, we spent quite a bit of money already on that future facilities project, which
Well,
is,
the project is relatively large, so you ought to be also be able to pinpoint certain portion of the project that might qualify. Even if the whole project wouldn't qualify. I mean, the question is, does the building itself qualify?
Well,
We
I
have-
mean, it
yeah.
says right in the ordinance, engineering, site preparation,
Right.
clearing, grading. Pick one.
yeah.
Pick one and pay for it out of.
I'm gonna say, and I would assume that project will exhaust the public safety and possibly the public works accounts. Recreation, I mean, I don't know what work we did for, there's a new trailhead off of Elmwood Road down here.
That was all the way over cultivation.
They paid for all of that, but that would have been something for recreation or open space where we could have used impact fee money. Did we have to pay for the survey? And at one point the town was being asked to pay for the survey of that property. It was like $12,000.
We did pay for the survey out of impact fee.
Oh, they did? Okay, so there was a good.
How many building permits are issued a year on average?
New homes, we average between 8 and 12.
All right, so call it 10.
Yeah.
All right, just round numbers.
It may go up, the average may go up,
Not anytime soon. Given the situation, the reason that I ask is because, let me find where did I write this down? Hold on. I got it somewhere. The impact fee for a new, here it is. Call it $2,100 for a house, for a 3-bedroom house. All right, so you're talking about it. Yeah. I mean, that, just standard 3-bedroom house, call it roughly $2,100. Times 10 is $21,000. We're talking about $21,000 a year, and how are we gonna spend it? I just wanna, here again, to point that out. It's not a whole lot of money.
Right, I mean, but though that, and it gets spread across 4 different funds and those funds accumulate over time.
Yes.
So by the time you go to use it, you could, I don't know how much money's sitting in those accounts.
Yes.
And I think that's, I mean, in my personal opinion, that's probably the fund we're gonna use the least.
Absolutely, I agree. That was written. The person responsible for writing most of that wanted a ball field. But it was, you know, it was the whim of the player.
But I can see that being used that if the school population in Pownell grows and Pownell Elementary School or RSU 5 at Pownell Elementary School would want additional resources, they may come to the town for playground equipment, for improving the ball field that's there, the soccer field. I mean, that would be a good use of it.
We did use some of that recreation money for the skating rink.
Okay. And I think when they,
Benefits.
right, and they had, but the school is infrastructure. And they think they had to do repairs to the basketball court when the RSU was first formed. I don't know if we used recreation money then, how that got paid for. Okay.
And I think that the town pays for the liner for that every other year for the.
And does that come out of the recreation account or does that coming out of the town budget?
I think it's coming out of the town budget because we haven't voted on it at town meeting for a long time.
But,
Any appropriations out of impact fee money has to go through the town meeting.
wouldn't it seem logical to take it out of the recreation impact fee account?
And you could, I think that argument could be made without
Unless-
violating the intent of,
Unless you count that as routine maintenance, then you can't use impact fee money. Or a routine operational cost.
Or unless it was voted on at the time. That we would
yeah.
maintain that over a lifetime of the.
Yeah. Yeah, because it says no portion or of no portion of the, I don't know what that word is. No portion shall be used for routine maintenance or operational activities. If the liner wears out every other year, that's a maintenance activity. So it's got to come out of town budget then. Okay, all right. So I'm not seeing anybody reaching an epiphany that, hey, there's a source of funds that we could include in our planning.
I'm skeptical.
Oh, yeah,
Well, one, we would have to know what the funds are. We need, I guess, a firm definition from either state statute or.
we could go back to the select board and say, we've looked at this and a big question where we would get most involved, probably public works and public safety. And we need a clear definition of what is infrastructure. If it's only things that are stationary, they don't move. That would be good to know. We could get involved with recreation if the town came and said, hey, we want to put $100,000 of playground equipment at Pownell Elementary School. And we want it in the capital budget. Well, then we would probably want to go look at recreation.
Now, when towns look for a definition, do they go, does the state go by what it is actually in reality being used for by different towns? Because different towns may be freer using the funds than other towns. And so there may be.
I would have to reread this full statute. It's probably been 3 or 4 years.
I mean, would you take it back to the town attorney and say, as written here, what do you think infrastructure includes, particularly public works and public safety? Get an opinion. And who would, the town attorney would probably then go back and look at what is generally used in the state of Maine in defining infrastructure.
Then I think that's important to actually realize how it is being used by a lot of towns right now, because that would set precedent. I would imagine.
And we need to, in the context of this ordinance.
Oh, we need-
Or, well, if you,
Yeah.
if it can't be simply defined, then maybe it needs, and the attorney could go back and say, you really need to write this, you know, you have definitions in open space, but you have no definitions in any of the other sections. So you need to put some definitions of what's being included, like a fire truck that rolls to a house fire versus we gotta buy a new tanker because the $20 million project down the street needs more water on site if we're called. Well, is that infrastructure or is that just rolling stock?
Oh, that's a phase A. New piece of firefighting equipment.
Right. I mean, if the town were to grow in a way that you needed another snowplow. You know, you got a $250,000 piece of equipment, is that infrastructure or just rolling stock?
Okay, playing the devil's advocate.
Yeah.
here. Actually not, I'm just trying to think of everything. All right, so you got a $20 million business going in, your tax rate goes up. Isn't the point of that tax rate to contribute to additional costs that that business incurs on the town? I mean, couldn't the argument be made that, yeah, you gotta buy a new tank truck, but that should be included as part of, you know, that should be understood as part of the taxes that we are paying to you.
That argument could be made, yes.
That argument was probably made when the ordinance was introduced. Because that's a typical argument that happens when you first introduce impact fees.
Sure, that's what any developer is gonna say.
Sure.
I suppose, I mean, you know, I've clearly been a little skeptical here, and I've said so. The way I read this impact fee ordinance, is that that the fees are to go to the overall betterment of town amenities that can be enjoyed by all. What I automatically think of are things like, you know, walking paths, for example, that a lot of towns put in, you know. Those are the things that I think about. And when you start talking about taking money to be used for other things, as the spirit of this is laid out, that's the source of my
So
skepticism.
you're trying to say that the spirit is more directing is into a recreational direction?
Yes, yes.
As it's
The
written,
walking path would be,
was written, the spirit of that ordinance is more towards the
Is-
betterment of the town for all.
Is in that direction.
if you, the phrase the betterment of the town for all, that doesn't necessarily mean recreational or fun.
Well,
I mean,
it almost, yeah, I mean, recreational impact fee, open space impact fee.
whether or not the fire department is able to protect my house is betterment of the town as well. It's not fun thought.
Betterment for you.
Yeah, does it make me feel happy? I mean, walking path does.
That's the measure. It doesn't make you feel happy.
Well, I mean, the other side is if all of a sudden the planning board allows a 4-story building in town. A fire truck may not be able to reach up there to fight a fire and they have to go buy a ladder truck. Could be construed as infrastructure.
That's a $2 million.
Right, and should impact fees be used to
That's a clear consequence of the building,
Yeah.
of the, an impact consequence of. Yeah,
I mean, in some towns, it's, as they grow, they add more public roads. Well, we don't add public roads as we grow, where they're all private roads. So you can't argue that we need more dump trucks to plow those roads in the winter because we don't plow them, right? Right. So the infrastructure is not growing, town-owned infrastructure is not growing with that type of development. We don't have a water system, we don't have a sewer system, we don't have a telecommunication system. As we have grown, the infrastructure in this building has had to grow to accommodate the services that come out of this building. So there's someplace we can point to that there's an impact of having growth.
And even though the roads that are being built are private, they're still using public.
Yeah, to get to them, right? So there's more traffic on our roads. So we could probably talk about this all night.
Yeah, that's a fact.
So in terms of what we should do next. There's one thing, the thing that comes to mind is go push it back at the select board and say, we really can't tell the value of this and for this committee's activities unless we understand better the infrastructure it's referring to, particularly in public safety and public works. That's one course. The other is to say, there really isn't a whole lot here anyway, is what you were suggesting.
Yeah.
Why put any more effort into it? That would be just drop it. And revisit it sometime in the future when there's more value to it.
How long did it take to write this? You debated it for months.
I wasn't involved in writing. Jim Briggs, who was a selectman, pretty much wrote that on his own.
Hmm.
It's been a while. I remember it coming to town meeting. It's then, not everyone was in favor of it, but, and there's still people that don't like it, but it's there. And one issue that comes up every so often is we have these funds to be used by the town for the dedicated purposes or prescribed purposes. And if you don't use them within a certain time period, you have to give the money back.
Yeah.
And most of the discussions in recent years have been at town meeting, if we don't do something in 2 years, this amount of money is going back. So the town has it. What can we do with it? Has struggled to find appropriate things to do with it. Now, I would be of the opinion, if you don't have anything to do with it, give it back. It's to the people that gave you the money. Now, and it's that hard to find an appropriate thing to do with it, but if we have it, why aren't we doing the appropriate things to provide the enjoyment to the residents of town?
Well, the argument for that would be we don't want to give it back because we're not collecting a whole lot of revenue on a year-by-year basis. And we have a project that we know is going to cost $100,000 and it's going to take us 5 years to save up, but that is the goal. And so don't give the money back, hold on to it and use it when you can use it in a meaningful way instead of running around looking for ways.
Right, but you're constrained by this, that you have to give it back.
Yeah, well,
And I think that's part of the state statute.
Yeah.
You have to use it within a certain. time.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a shame.
It
Okay.
is a bit.
Because
Every time you think you might have a decent way of, okay, in 15 years, we're gonna use it to.
Yeah, but then the whole definition
The
of,
multi-plate culvert on Poland Ranger Road. And then, they have to get back.
but that is,
What we haven't.
Yeah.
Then,
Oh,
then it's not exactly an impact fee anymore, if you're gonna use it down the road 15 years.
yeah, you've got to spend, section 8B, you've got to spend it within 10 years or give it back to whoever is currently living in that house. Not even the person that paid the money, it's
yeah, I
whoever,
noticed that. Yeah.
whoever's there now, but,
Like
Good.
money.
yeah, it's like, oh, wow.
I mean, it's fair to say that,
In the lottery.
Buy the right house.
but it's fair to say that the impact fee exists because there was a development going on
Right.
somewhere. And if you're gonna use that fee 15 years from now, then the impact of that development is long gone.
Right. But wait, I know we had talked about putting some hiking trails with benches or something around the cemetery. That's never been done as far as I know. And that was gonna be with impact fee
I
money.
bought the bench with, impact fee money.
Oh,
I
okay.
bought the granite.
Okay,
Or whether it's ever been erected or not. It was
Okay.
bought and delivered to the cemetery.
okay. Because there's gonna be like a walking path for people, for the people my age to go over there and get their exercise.
You can
Wave
sit on the bench.
You sit on the bench, yeah, wave. Wave to your friends, yeah. Okay, so what's your pleasure? Then do we drop it? Do we
Well, we
send it
can-
back to the select board and say, hey, to do anything, we have to have,
I mean, we've spent quite a bit of time talking about it. Now, if we just drop it, we might as well have a better definition from the select board.
And the select board will probably give it to the town planner to look into.
that's fine, somebody that has some expertise or and the planner may have to go to the attorney to, hey,
Spend money.
you okay with that?
I'm fine with that
All
approach.
right,
yeah.
so can we have, let's do a motion to go back to the select board for clarification of the term infrastructure, particularly as it relates to public works and public safety, before we can go any further with this.
A second.
Can we
You-
add something to it? Getting back to this businesses things, I would like to see further understanding of what that means, because I mean, it's mentioned here, but,
Which section are you talking about?
well, the section 4,
Right.
activities subject to the fees, dwelling unit or businesses, existing homes or square footage added to existing businesses. It doesn't mention new structures, new businesses at all.
They should.
I would-
It isn't fair to the homeowner.
Creation of, anything involves the creation of a new dwelling unit or business as defined in the zoning ordinance, but not limited to single-family homes, apartments, manufactured housing units, mobile homes,
As
Or-
well as additional bedroom units added to existing homes or square footage added to existing businesses. But they don't talk about new businesses. And in any event, they don't talk about the way those,
There really isn't any mechanism to determine the impact fee for a business.
there is not, because all of this is based on residential.
it's all based on bedrooms.
Yeah. And so I would like, that needs clarification. In addition to better definitions.
A large business is gonna impact more than a single family house.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Personally, I'd like to see us see someone go completely through that ordinance and say, reapportion how the impact fees, where they go. I mean, the biggest portion goes to recreation. I would think public safety and public works would be a larger.
Well, it is busted down according to, yeah. Each one has its, the, recreation impact is 336. the open space impact, this is per bedroom is 127. You know, so it is apportioned within, within the, but to get back to it, now we have 3 points to make. One is we need better definitions. 2, we need more understanding of the role that businesses play in this. And then finally, we want to make the point that we're only talking about $21,000 a year.
Okay, and so I would take that and say the question is, we need a definition of infrastructure. What does it mean, particularly as it relates to public works, and public safety? 2, we need a better understanding of how this relates to businesses, since all the formulas are based on bedrooms.
That's correct.
And then 3, we need a review of the apportionment between the 4 categories, as it doesn't appear that it is equitable across the 4 categories, i.e. recreation is
Okay.
heavy compared to public works safety. Does that make sense? So that would be our feedback to the select board.
So how are you gonna phrase this motion?
All right, Kyla needs to make the motion, so, because you already threw in a second,
Oh, boy.
to do those 4 items, to go back to the select board with the 4 items that I just described. And I will give you the specific language when I write the letter to the select board.
Mhm.
And it'll be clarification of what infrastructure means in the ordinance, particularly relative to public works and public safety. 3, a review of how the impact fee is calculated for businesses, since the formulas all talk about bedrooms. And then 3, a review of the apportionment of the impact fees between the 4 categories, which currently is very heavily weighted towards recreation. Period.
This sign out here was paid for with recreation. We voted on that at town meeting 2 years ago.
Really?
Really? And they're gonna put monkey bars on it or something? So, I
Yeah,
mean,
you know.
okay,
That's for community information.
then that's recreation. So you, all right.
I have
They
I have
can't work.
serious trouble with
Yeah.
that approach.
Okay, but that's either here or there, and it's not on the asset schedule, so we'll let somebody else think deep thoughts about that one, right? Okay,
So
so,
we need a clarification on what the relation to public works is to safety and businesses, and how it is apportionate between the.
right, and when I draft this up specifically for the select board, everybody will get a copy, but
Yeah.
we'll insert into the minutes however I wind up drafting it.
Okay.
Okay. But it'll all be to that spirit that we
Okay,
you
if you
just
send it
described.
to me.
Yes.
then
So,
You send it to me, I'll make sure it's
okay,
talked about it, the select board meeting.
okay, all right. Okay, good discussion. Back to the agenda. Next item for discussion, and again, we may not resolve this tonight. I don't think we will, but I wanted to have a discussion, and particularly I was hoping one of the select board members would come, and he is here for this discussion. Department heads were also invited, or were given a copy of the agenda for this particular item. And that is the issue of long lead times and the impact on planning for those long lead times. We've heard from our department heads that fire engines could be as much as 3 years to get a fire engine. Dump trucks could be at least a year to get. And traditionally, as we have planned our capital plan, the planning that this committee does, the approval that the town gives at town meeting, and the acquisition of those assets all happens within a relatively short period of time. Say 6 to 9 months. But it's all assumed to have happened in the same plan year. Now, when you say, I need a dump truck for 2027, and you plan to meet the need in 2027, which then gets to town meeting, you get the vote, you go to the treasurer and say, all right, now you're authorized to acquire that truck, but the truck isn't gonna be here till 2028.
Okay.
So-
And that's the difference between the plan year and the funding year.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
So, somehow we have got to be in sync, whatever way we choose to deal with this. The town in acquiring equipment and the committee in planning for the resources to be available for that equipment needs to be in sync. And one of the problem we have seen in the past is that we always rely on the current capital reserve account balance that's the money to put towards the plan plus any appropriations we want to make. And if we have included in that a dump truck that's been approved by the town, but the money's still sitting in the account and it's not gonna leave the account for another year. Now, we have planned to spend that on things besides that truck. So we're spending that same money more than once, if that makes sense to everybody. So all right, somehow, let me try one more shot at this. Let's say the dump truck is $250,000 and it's gonna be this year. That's what we plan for. We assume that money goes out the door and the dump truck comes on site so that by the next time we get the capital reserve balance, that money has been used. And now the dump truck is over here because it's in the past. Now, if the dump truck gets funded, but it's not going to happen until the following year, then we come around again to this year, the money for the dump truck that we thought went out the door is still in the balance. But the dump truck, and from a plan purpose, is already passed. So the plan is looking over the next 20 years, and that dump truck is 12 years out now, not 1 year out. So I couldn't think of a PowerPoint presentation that would show this.
Okay,
So if we assume the money's being spent now and the dump truck, and we don't spend the money for a year, we get the next capital reserve account balance, then we say, we got $1 million and we can use that for the next 20 years. Well, we can't because there's $250,000 that belong to this truck that hasn't happened yet.
Mhm.
So we have the opportunity to spend that $250,000 in the plan twice. Once when we allocated it to the truck that's going to take a year to get. And then once again, when we actually spend the money when the truck arrives. Now, in the plan, we can do that. In the real world of dollars and cents, we can't. And that's going to get us in trouble. So we have to figure out a way to make sure that we are in sync with the information going into the plan. So here's one scenario. We're going to get that truck, but we're not going to pay for it for a year.
Mhm.
So what we say to the town is, all right, you move the money from the capital reserve account into a side fund that sits over there that the committee doesn't manage. The treasurer manages that. It's for the truck instead. But ours is now less 250. So in terms of the plan, we have spent that 250.
Okay.
It doesn't exist anymore. We can't allocate it to another project.
Mhm.
When the town gets the truck, we don't particularly, we care, but at this point, we don't particularly care because
Because you've locked it in.
we've locked it in, it's out, it's going out. So then the next problem is now now you've got an asset that in the plan has a 12-year life. But we didn't get it until the year after we said it was needed. So do you,
Become an 11-year life or.
right, in the plan, we're gonna do it again in 11 years.
But you can, every year we look at the dates, so every year.
Well, and so that means every
the
year
dates
we,
Can be changed.
every year we've gotta,
Well,
that's
yeah.
gonna get confusing, I think. Is remembering I'm just trying to keep track of every asset. Now, there's another way, is to say to Matt, you need the town needs the new truck right here. And it's gonna take you a year to get that new truck. You need to be getting a commitment back here, a year ahead. So you have the town approval and you have the money committed. So that when the truck comes in, it's right when you need it. That's when the money goes out of the account and that's when the item goes out of the plan.
Because it would become.
I think that's the best scenario, to put it on the department head to order it,
For the time.
to get the approval at town meeting, order the truck ahead of time.
Well, I think that makes sense because otherwise you're essentially risking that truck is not serviceable for a year.
But the department heads deal with the guy who built the truck.
Right.
Possibly
And,
3 years
and,
on.
and so if the environment changes, then I think that the department head all of a sudden knows how long it's gonna take to get that truck in service, because the times have changed, and it is up to them, I would think, to keep track on that. Now, we can still put the money aside in a different account, but then they will have to manage the time.
Right.
And if they need a truck, replace a truck in 2025, then, and the lead time is a year earlier, then they have to just get in action a year earlier.
Yeah,
they should know that.
and I don't know if Matt has to go a year early, what type of financial commitment does he have to make to the vendor
To lock it in.
to lock it in so that he takes delivery? Because he's not gonna pay for the truck. I mean, he may put a deposit on it. So I don't, somehow,
How does it work now?
but maybe we don't
We
care.
would do it in a vote that should it come in early, we take the money out of the undesignated balance and then repay it the following
That-
year
that could be-
with the-
That could be a way to do it, yeah.
How often do you anticipate this happening?
I'm hoping and sure that
Yeah.
the supply chain catches up.
Right.
But right now it's dump trucks and fire trucks
Those are the only two items
that we see,
that we see right now.
right?
And we're in luck because the new dump truck hit the dealership. And it's going to the plow unit. They should have it in February,
Oh, okay.
Mm.
so.
We get that all in the same year. So all right, we are. But then with Jesse, I mean, the last time I talked to him, he said 3-year wait on the fire truck. Well,
Yeah, but if he orders a fire truck, when does he have to pay in advance? Do you know? But how does he guarantee that he's gonna buy it to the distributor? Do you know?
No idea. Not on his good works.
well, I think, but since we are special ordering, I mean, if it was just a standard fire truck, I'm sure if he said, oh, sorry, can't do it, they'd have that sold in minutes. Yeah, quickly, but
I don't remember.
It's a custom truck.
I don't remember having to pay anything in advance when I ordered trucks. I don't think we ever paid anything because we could cancel an order without any real damage other than to the manufacturer.
Well, that's that's the supply chain thing. It's never had to be dealt with before.
yeah. Yeah, this is all kind of a new phenomena I was never worried about this before, but I just, we had that one incident with the bridge where a large piece of that got out of sync with the plan, and we wound up allocating a large piece of money twice in the plan inadvertently.
Yeah.
And we didn't like doing it that way.
Finally reconciled.
Yeah, we finally straightened it out, but it was like, what happened? So, and particularly, you get the fire trucks are actually going to be easier, I think, because they're bonded. So it's not gonna flow through the same way in the plan. So if it's just selling, all right, I'm gonna commit to the fire truck when it gets here, I'll sell the bonds and off we go. We don't have that capital reserve issue. It's really only the dump trucks or the big ticket items that we've got.
Excavator.
Right, we're not bonding it, we're funding it through appropriation. And if we get out of sync between what the town's doing and what the plan's doing, it could cause a headache. The town will be fine, we might not be fine because we planned for another $100,000, $250,000 to fund this plan, and it's not there.
Well, of course,
Because it's just-
with the fire truck, he still has the issue of the replacement year.
Yeah, he's got the issue, and then maybe he needs to be thinking about, if I need this in 2032, I've got it 2029, I gotta go to town meeting and get it approved. So I can get the order in and, try and make those two things meet up together, but it doesn't cause the capital reserve account issue that a dump truck would.
I think probably a lot of it will be in the wording of the warrant.
Yeah, I mean, somebody'd have to give some deep thought to how you would warrant that, because somebody like me is gonna say, why am I gonna give you this approval way ahead of time? Because things might change. Well, of course they might change, but you want to get the fire truck here when you need it, not 3 years after you need it. Because then you might be spending a lot of money to
Maintain what you-
Band-Aid the old engine together.
Well, here's again, I mean, he has to start planning a little different. He has to adjust his planning situation.
Right. Yeah, it's gonna have to go on the department, I would think. To plan ahead.
So what that means then we would continue to plan for the year the item is needed. And the department head then has to manage getting the approvals and the item here for the year it's needed.
And then come to you and adjust the plan as far as the replacement year,
Yeah.
if need be.
I mean, even then you may say it's 1 year and it winds up actually being 2, or you got it a year ahead of time. So now but at least,
Of course, it also depends on if he orders a truck 2 years in advance. I mean, at what point is he gonna need the money actually? So that could be delayed. No, he needs approval anyway. I mean, he needs,
You still need to.
he needs the approval from the town before he, yeah.
They need it ahead of time.
and if he needs a deposit, say you gotta put a $20,000 deposit down on a dump truck. I don't know what you can do, but it could come out of surplus. Reimbursed. Right. Right. Okay.
That would all have to be worded into the warrant.
Yes.
Complicated.
What's that?
It's complicated.
It is. It is.
But so what are we going to suggest, that we set up a parallel fund?
Well, I would say right now, let me see if I can summarize the conversation, is that the committee sees this as an issue that department heads have to manage, the lead times and the
Yes.
approvals.
the department heads will have to.
manage the lead times and the approvals for the equipment.
Yeah,
And that the committee will continue to plan based on the need for the asset item in service.
Otherwise, you're gonna be in a nightmare if you fight.
Yeah, I don't think we want to manage it. and I-
No.
And trying to manage the plan, if things are moving all over the place, well,
But then the idea of putting those funds into a dedicated account during that time period, that appeals to me.
yeah. It does to me too, but I would say,
That way, if it comes in 6 months early. Or
right,
8 months early. You're covered.
And ain't nobody else gonna spend it.
And.
Right. right.
well, that's why it has to be.
And I would, yeah, I would say, let's leave that open to discussion once the department heads and the administrator get involved into how the money gets managed. Because at that point, we just want to be in concert when the funds are leaving the plan in a way that's easy to manage for us and the town. Because if it comes in unexpectedly, they use it, and we hadn't figured on that, we'll have a period of time when we're out of sync, but it gets trued up at the beginning of the next plan.
So basically what we have decided is to put the onus on the department heads, the onus of the planning and dealing with the time issue.
Right.
And that the committee will take the responsibility of managing the funds, but that we have not really
We're gonna-
decided how.
Right, we're gonna manage the plan the same way we do now. The equipment is targeted for the year it's needed. And the department head has to figure out how to plan the approval and the expenditure such that they all meet at that time.
So if I'm bidding a fire truck, I've got to get the approval from the town, and then I need to have that bid written, so delivery no later than.
Right. Or not before. Or, and because, yeah. And then if it comes out that there needs to be monies taken out of the capital reserve account, we have to be in that discussion to know how that affects the planning. Because if you take $250,000 out of the reserve and,
Years early.
right. And, and we don't know that money has left, and we're counting on that money to be
Yeah.
available for the projects we've got coming down the road. So if the money's out, we got to get the asset out of the plan. And I'm not sure the best way to do that for both us and the town at this point. But they both have to go together. If the money stays in, then the item stays in, and the department has got to manage to that. That's when they said they needed it, so that's when they've got to manage to that date. I'm sure that's what they're trying to do anyway, because they don't want to be left with a dump truck that's failing, and then all of a sudden have to get another year out of it.
No, they shouldn't.
You comfortable with that? We'll work it out if we come up with a better idea. Okay. The agenda. Back on the agenda, open discussion, any other items to come before the committee? Seeing nothing, next meetings are Wednesday, January 8th. Matt Nielsen from Public Works will be presenting his part of the asset schedule that night. January 29th, Chief Peters will be presenting his part of the asset schedule that night. I have no idea who's going to present Mallet Hall. The committee chair says she does not do that. Threw it back on she said the budget is done by the town administrator. I don't know what discussions were going on there, but the new town administrator has not acknowledged any of this, but
They don't have an administrator.
we have an act,
Paying the bills, that's about.
yeah,
Yeah,
so.
she's overwhelmed. I mean,
Yeah.
he and she, I mean, the whole crew's rather overwhelmed. I really feel bad for them.
But Mallet Hall traditionally has been done, I thought, by the committee chair.
Yeah.
And she says no. The current chair says
I'm
she
the
does not do
chair
that.
anymore.
I know you're not. I'm just looking between you two. So I don't know.
No, he's not on the committee. anymore.
My only other thought was to go to the select board and say,
Well, I think
we need somebody to,
Becky pretty much took charge of that quite a bit, and then I gave her my input, and that's how it worked. But I don't think Kathy could do it by herself, and if she doesn't have the help from those people, she doesn't know what the administration stuff goes.
oh,
I
but
think-
Becky did the operating budget. We're just talking about the
Yeah.
4 items that are on the asset schedule.
Yeah, that's.
getting updates
she
there.
could easily do it. It's not-
So I mean, if we don't, that may be another letter I write to the select board as we, yeah.
Well, we have the $27,000 sign now, but we don't know how to work it yet, do we?
Becky did.
Yeah, but she never did. She never made it work. I asked her to work,
it out.
I asked her to work it for me, and then she left, and so I asked, could you guys announce the potluck that I organized? And she said that she would look into it, but then finally she said, no, she put her hands in the air and said, no, I just don't have the time to look at it.
Okay,
Right.
nothing else on the agenda. A motion to adjourn would be in order.
A
Second.
motion.
You made the motion?
I made the
You made the second. All in favor? We're adjourned. Let me stop. I don't know what happened to that recording. We're still recording or not, but. I think we are.